My name's Homelander, and I'm not here to hurt anyone.
Don't come in.
In my opinion, Homelander is one of the most terrifying, most broken, and psychologically compelling characters ever put to screen. To get a handle on Homelander, I think we first need to step away from the fiction and turn to a real-life experiment. One of the most controversial in history, actually. Harry Harlow's work with rhesus macaques. You see, Harlow separated infant monkeys from their mothers. He then offered them two surrogates. One was a cold wire mother that gave them food. The other was a soft cloth mother that offered only comfort. The overwhelming majority of the monkeys chose the cloth mother. It proved that contact comfort was a much more powerful, more primal need than just sustenance. The long-term effects on these monkeys, they were catastrophic. They grew up to be socially broken, aggressive, and deeply disturbed adults. And to me, Homelander's upbringing in that Vought lab, it's the human version of Harlow's wire mother. They gave him everything he needed to physically survive, but they deprived him of the one thing he needed to psychologically develop: simple, nurturing, human comfort. And just like those monkeys, he was left completely incapable of empathy or any kind of healthy connection.
You should have been raised in a home with a family who loved you, not in a cold lab with doctors.
And yet, I turned out great.
This brings me to John Bowlby's attachment theory. Bowlby argued that a child needs a secure base, a caregiver who is consistently there for them in order to feel safe enough to explore the world. Without that, a child's entire understanding of relationships becomes fragmented, and Homelander's attachment style, I would classify it as disorganized. This happens when a caregiver is a source of both comfort and fear, and that's a perfect description of Vought and its scientists, isn't it? This creates a deep-seated fear of being unlovable, and a total inability to soothe himself. You see this most clearly in his relationship with Madeline Stillwell. He's desperate for a kind of motherly affection from her, but she's also his handler. He craves her approval, yet he hates her for controlling him. And that final act is, in my view, the explosive resolution to all this conflict. His words, right before he does it, they expose everything. He says,
You promised me. No more lies. You fucking promised me.
That's it, right there. The desire for a real connection, immediately followed by the ultimate act of violent disconnection. Homelander's childhood trauma, it didn't just go away, it festered. And to protect that fragile little boy inside, he built a psychological fortress around himself. Narcissistic Personality Disorder. He has this grandiose sense of self-importance. He's always exaggerating his achievements, always expecting everyone to see him as superior. As he says himself,
I'm the upgrade.
He's completely lost in these fantasies of unlimited power and success. His entire public persona is just one big, carefully managed fantasy, and he really believes he's special. He declares it loud and clear.
I'm not just like the rest of you. I'm stronger. I'm smarter. I'm better. I am better.
Everything he does is driven by this bottomless need for admiration. His entire emotional state depends on his approval ratings. He operates with this incredible sense of entitlement.
Listen, Annika. I'm the Homelander. And I can do whatever the fuck I want.
He uses people like tools. He has absolutely zero empathy, which we saw so clearly with Flight 37. And he has this arrogant, disdainful attitude toward anyone he thinks is beneath him. But even a diagnosis of NPD, I don't think it captures the full depth of his evil. For that, you need something darker. A concept known as malignant narcissism. Now, this isn't an official diagnosis, it's a clinical idea that describes a hybrid, a mix of narcissism and antisocial personality disorder with a bit of paranoia and sadism thrown in.
Interestingly, malignant narcissists, even though they usually can care about another person, putting it differently, relations can matter. They do seem to have some urge, some desire for a connection to others.
And that explains the parts of him that go beyond just ego. He clearly enjoys watching others suffer. That's the sadism. He's convinced everyone is plotting against him. That's the paranoia. And he acts with a complete disregard for any law or moral code. That's the antisocial behavior. But I'd argue that even this isn't his true self. It's all a desperate defense mechanism, an armor of arrogance he built to protect the terrified, shamed little kid that's still locked inside. And that deep vulnerability, I see it as a symptom of complex PTSD, which comes from long-term, repeated trauma, especially in childhood. His lab rat upbringing, it's a textbook cause. So, the big question, was Homelander born a monster, or was he made?
I don't need everyone to love me. I don't need anyone. I don't need you!
I often think about the work of a neuroscientist named James Fallon. The irony is, Fallon discovered that he himself had the brain of a psychopath.
And I started with the psychiatrist who knew me for many years and who knew my behaviors. And then I went on to my family and very close friends, and they all said the same thing. They said, well, you're pretty much close to being a psychopath. We've been telling you for years.
And he came up with this really compelling model. He called it the three-legged stool of psychopathy. Fallon's theory is that it usually takes three things to create a truly dangerous, violent psychopath. 1, high-risk genetics. 2, a specific brain pattern with low activity in the parts that handle empathy. And 3, abuse or trauma in early childhood. Fallon said that if you only have the first 2 legs, the genes and the brain, you might just be a pro-social psychopath if you had a loving childhood. But when you add that third leg, the abuse, that's when you create a monster.
Then when I was looking at it just a couple of years ago, I looked at some of the alleles, and one of them was a serotonin transporter. And I have these so-called warrior genes. I'm just loaded with them. But some of these, they're only warrior genes if you're abused or abandoned early in life, especially from birth to the first few years.
And when I apply this to Homelander, the picture becomes terrifyingly clear. His genetics, they come from Soldier Boy, a violent, cruel man. That's leg 1. His brain, well, we can't scan it, but his profound lack of empathy and his terrible impulse control, they're a perfect match for the psychopathic brain pattern. That's leg 2, and finally, his childhood in that Vought lab, a systematic ordeal of torture and abuse. That's leg 3, and the most horrific part of all this is that Vought probably knew exactly what they were doing. They built a weapon with 2 legs of the stool already in place, and then they methodically, deliberately kicked in the third. They ensured they would create a monster, one they thought they could control. This wasn't an accident. It was the inevitable result of a corporate strategy. So everything, the attachment trauma, the CPTSD, the malignant narcissism, it all feeds one single, all-consuming need, a desperate craving for love and adoration. For Homelander, love isn't something you share. It's narcissistic supply. It's just external validation to temporarily fill that massive hole inside of him. But what happens when a god doesn't get the love he demands? He turns to his other great power, fear. His speech to Starlight is the absolute key to his entire psychology. He tells her,
I'd prefer to be loved. I would. But if you take that away from me, well, being feared is A1 okie doke by me.
Now listen to that closely. He's not saying he prefers fear. He says it plainly. He would rather be loved. Fear is just the backup plan. This means his violence is often reactive. It's what happens when his supply of love is threatened. For 3 seasons, that fragile balance held. But at the end of season 3, something changes. When he incinerates that protester in front of everyone, and the crowd cheers. In that moment, his 2 driving forces, The need for love and the capacity for violence, they merge into one. For the very first time, he is getting adoration for his violence. His core conflict is resolved. The need to be loved doesn't hold him back anymore. Now it pushes him forward. So, who is Homelander? Is he a tragic figure, or is he a monster? After thinking about this for a long time, I've come to a conclusion. He's both, and that is the true horror of his character. He's a tragic figure because the child, John, never ever had a chance. He was the victim of a system that broke him on purpose. But he is also an irredeemable monster because of the choices the adult Homelander continues to make. His story, for me, is a dark parable for our times. It's a warning about corporate greed, about the corrupting nature of absolute power, and about the devastating consequences that can ripple out from the suffering of just one single unloved child.